Thank you, Rick. Thanks, everybody. And thanks particularly to the Federal Reserve for hosting us and to Nidra and her team at GCI for putting together this panel for the program for today and for all of you for coming. The fact that you're here indicates, as what we've already known, that this is a critical issue that we're fighting to rebuild our neighborhoods. They are neighborhoods at the core of our city. We have some incredibly strong neighborhoods. More importantly, what you've heard as we talk about Chatham is we have had strong neighborhoods in communities of color. And I really want to highlight that because I want to make sure that we recognize that with this idea around the middle class, we have and have had a strong black middle class. We have had strong black middle class neighborhoods. And a lot of things happened that impacted them. Then you've talked about some of those things over the course of time. But I think let's just remember that some of the reasons that neighborhoods like Chatham and declined, or Austin or Bronzeville, happened in part because of broader economic things. We know, at least when I was growing up, in my family, when black people would say, when America gets a cold, right? Black people get pneumonia or like Ebola, right? Right? So we have a horrible recession. And also, we also know that housing policy and practices impacted our ability to buy homes. That goes way back to the early 60s. Where we couldn't get mortgages, and the last recession. So the fact is that the impact on these middle-class neighborhoods have been policies, they've been racism, they've been discriminatory practices. One of the single biggest issues, and I'm sure we'll talk some more about this, that we're facing right now is we talk a lot, and I know you talked earlier today, about jobs and about workforce, right? And we talk a lot. We got to put some jobs. All we got to do is create some jobs, and we do have to create some jobs. But the fact is that the jobs that used to support the middle class, those entry-level jobs or those jobs that you could go in and build, those jobs are A, disappearing, B, those jobs, to the extent they have, require skill sets. We have a giant skills gap in communities of color, huge, in part because we underinvested in our schools. I was going to talk just for a couple minutes about the Chicago public schools and where we were and where we are and where we still have to go. For a really long time, as recently as 5-6 years ago, the graduation rate in Chicago public schools was under 50%. Worse, of course, for children of color. Under 50%. So 50% were not graduating from high school as few as 5 years ago. So what does that mean? So those young people who are out, not engaged and disconnected, were the people we failed to educate. And so when we talk about putting jobs in places, we also have to talk about how we're going to skill and prepare these young people who we have undereducated for those jobs, right? So we have some work to do. I tell you that to say that context, that we know, to remind everybody that we know what good neighborhoods look like. We have them here all across the city. We know what those components are. We know that they require a strong middle class. We know that they require decent schools. We know that they require a strong small business base. We know that they require a good quality housing mix. We know what they are. What we really don't know, and we're still struggling with, and you've spent some time talking about, and what we're trying to do with GCI, is how do we ensure at the city level, for example, we can work on the infrastructure. We're working on the schools. We've made a lot of progress with the schools. The Chicago public schools are not perfect. We have a lot of work to do, but the graduation rate now is over 70%. Many more of our kids, and I'll just tell you, when I was on the school board, there were entire swaths of neighborhoods on the south and west sides. Like if you looked at a map, which we did, and they'd show you all the schools and where they were rigged, entire areas on the south and west sides where there was no performing school. Zero. So that if you wanted to live, if you lived in the city and sent your kid to school, you could not find a public school of choice where your child could go and get the education they deserve. That's no longer the case. In fact, it's completely opposite. Every neighborhood, south side, west side, there are at least one or two high-performing schools. We have a lot of work to do because one or two is not enough. But that is a lot. That has to happen. That has to happen if you're going to have people stay in the neighborhoods. We have to address our public safety problem. We're losing people. We're losing people who can have a choice to move are moving because they don't feel safe. We have to fix that. And we're working on it, but we have to address that. So we know what good neighbors are, and then that will help us, and we have to continue to invest in, the city does, as we will, in critical public infrastructure, transportation, our parks, our schools, because that is what draws not only people, but other investment. So I really wanted to just remind everybody that we know what it looks like. We know also what we need to do, but it's very hard work, and we get discouraged in doing it. Thank you.